Oh. This is the first time I've been nervous about an intro for a while for some reason.
Interesting.
I got butterflies.
That's right. Let's talk a bit of shit.
Huh?
Let's talk a bit of, whatever.
Yeah, dude, I'm keen. Whatever.
So, are you going to split up your training next week, Dean, or you?
It's
Secrets.
Secrets.
No, you just had too little days to do too much volume.
Yeah, not good. A bit,
It's like, you can get away with it for a week, but if you try to do that numerous weeks in a row, it'll catch up to you.
Oh, yeah, I'm feeling it.
And even 1 week can be too much. But I think, you handle volume really well, so it's like, you're going to be fine, but I wouldn't do it another week.
You say that, but it definitely doesn't feel like it.
Some people wouldn't have even made it, though.
Squats in particular, squatting.
Well, because you squatted twice yesterday.
I done 2 squats and then did it today as well, which those fronts almost killed me.
I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ready?
Dude,
I'm kill it.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, we've already been streaming for like a minute, so. We ready? Welcome to the Apex Strengthcast with your hosts, Tyler Seabrook and Anthony Krasner. Today we have Dean Thomas on. He's a paramedicine / advanced life support student with 1 year left of his degree. Today we're going to be talking, or better yet, we're going to be trying to understanding, and Dean's going to be talking about body mechanics and functions and trying to relate them back to powerlifting. We're excited for this one. I expect to learn a lot. I also expect to kind of get lost a lot, so I'm going to be asking him to clarify stuff. We'd like to test him out a bit, make sure he can put everything in terms we can all understand, put him on the spot a bit, and go from there.
So, Dean, also known as Nick, and the Nick Smasher.
Oh, getting there.
No, Nick's my boy.
Dean's been with us for about 4 months now. And I've been programming for 4 months and going into a comp in be just over a month now.
Yeah.
7 weeks.
Yeah, 7 weeks.
Something like that.
You excited?
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm very, very pumped. I did want to go into a comp when I was training myself a few years back, but now it's a real deal. We're all signed up and we're good to go. So I'm really excited for it.
And based on your form, you probably would have snapped yourself up.
I definitely would have colored a couple of red lights, that's for sure, if I did go on my own. But everything's sort of come together in the last couple months in particular.
Yeah.
It's been really good. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and like even with your numbers, when you got 230 squat looked good. The 150.5 bench to beat Nick's was good.
Now Nick came back and did 155.
Hey, we like a challenge.
Yeah, that's
easy as well. So I'm team Nick, Tyler's team Dean because he coaches him and Nick's my boy. So,
but not bad considering. You do have a base, but not bad. Was your Wilkes 350? I think that was your fit, and that's so 400's not far for you.
Yeah, well that'd be ideal. Yeah.
So Dean, train here for a while. Before we go into what we're going to be talking about, I just want to get actually an idea of, and putting you on the spot straight up, I really enjoy training with you and coaching you. What's your favourite thing about training at Apex?
Oh, the people, I've never been more motivated to train consistently and as much. The people here, everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants to improve. Everyone wants to get stronger. Everyone wants to get healthier. And both you as coaches really push us to do that. And it's an environment I can't really, explaining it can't do it justice. You have to experience it. You have to, and then even on comp days, getting around the team and that environment of everyone wants everyone to do well, even though you are competing with yourself as well as against other people. It's really good. It's hard to explain.
But yeah, you're still supporting, even people you're versing, you're still supporting. And healthy rivalries like you and Nick, the Nick Smasher.
Yeah.
What's called...
You're wrong, by the way.
I've summarized like that way in the sense of like the culture's better than I ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
like, it's crazy.
On that note, this podcast is brought to you by the Apex Strength training for everyone, because I forgot to plug it at the start.
Got to get that sponsor in there.
Apex Strength. All right, let's segue into really why you're here. I'm going to let Tyler do that.
Yeah. So what do we call it before?
Body mechanics.
Body mechanics and functions.
Yeah.
Of the body. So you haven't told everyone kind of like how long you've been studying for?
So all up, I've been studying this degree for about 3 years. I did defer in 2016, but I've been studying full-time all of 2017, all of 2018. So this degree, the paramedicine degree, is to become an ambulance officer in Victoria. So we need to know about a good understanding of how the body works in the homeostasis in terms of how your body keeps everything level and how different things can impact the body, which lead to different diseases and things like that. So yeah, it's having an understanding of that. I think I can relate that back to powerlifting and really give maybe a better understanding for people, which is the goal, is how that works.
Have you actually had the opportunity to relate it back to powerlifting yet?
Not in the sense of something as official as, say, a podcast, but just general chatter around the gym.
Like, jump headfirst in. This is good. I'm excited.
Yeah, but just general chatter around the gym, just, little tidbits that I learn here and there, and vice versa, with coaches giving same bits of information I didn't know, which broadens my understanding of things.
Yep.
I don't think I realized how much you actually knew and understood and studied until, we talk about it, and then I'm like, hey man, I'm really lost. Can you explain that further? And then you explain, I'm like, oh, okay, I learned a lot. So what's the first point we're touching on today?
Yeah, and I'm like, even that, we've had numerous conversations about, and we get, what do we get into? Just random things about the body, or how something's working, or what were we talking about? Was it cardiac arrest the other day? And, obviously, give the listeners, the statistics based on that.
It's, if you're unfortunate enough that you do go into cardiac arrest, it came out that we have a 10% survival rate if your heart actually physically stops.
That's with CPR.
That's with CPR, that's with defibrillation. Thankfully, every cardiac arrest I've gone to has resulted in ROSC, which is return of spontaneous circulation, so the heart starts beating again, and we've been able to get them to hospital in relatively stable state, which has been really good. But it is a statistic, and we're trying to improve it.
It's crazy. You've only come across the 10%ers.
Well,
yeah.
Would their hearts have fully stopped ones you've gone to, or is that why you've been lucky, because they haven't fully stopped?
That's again the thing. Probably the most major arrest I went to, which was at a gym, mobile MICA, which is mobile intensive care, was already there before we got there. So, and he was in his heart was beating and that. So it's hard to say because you can collapse and your heart still beats. So a true cardiac arrest, it would be impossible to tell unless there was, we've just got our signs to go off.
Yeah, and what are the contributing factors to having a heart attack? And I guess increasing awareness of things like diet, which obviously is going to be one of the biggest things, especially in the modern day Western world. Yeah,
so as a lot of food nowadays is processed, and with that comes a lot of, you've got two major headings for cholesterol. So you've got your HDL, which is your high density lipoproteins, and you've got your LDLs, which is your low density lipoproteins. Now, your HDL cholesterol is typically found in unsaturated fats such as omega-3, omega-6, and then your LDLs are found in your processed food, which is your saturated fats that you see a lot, from Macca's burgers and all that sort of jazz.
So you're telling me the CT Fletcher, bunches of burgers a day, isn't a good thing?
Well, it depends. I suppose there's always going to be outliers, but it will increase your chances. So what happened of suffering a
Don't worry, he's not an outlier. He's had heart attacks.
Okay, so I think I need to contact some of my online guys for the nutrition advice I've been giving. I'm like, just eat burgers. No, I'm just joking. I'm big on nutrition. good nutrition. You can be like, hey, I'm big on nutrition, but what kind? Like,
oh mate, for someone who's learnt about it, I still suck at it. So, so don't worry. So I guess why are LDLs bad and why are HDLs good? So the problem is with LDLs, the way it was explained to me was good camels and bad camels. It's really weird, but follow me on this. So your LDLs are your bad camels, and your HDLs are your good camels.
The kind of camels that don't really like ride them, like spit at you and shit.
Yeah. So what happens is
I'm just here for comic relief today.
So what happens is your coronary arteries, which is the arteries that run along your heart, the artery wall's made up of 3 layers. So to keep it simple, you've got your inner, middle, outer. And what happens is you can get a little tear in the inner wall, and your LDL, your bad camels, what they do is they stick to the artery wall. And now what happens is and that becomes plaque and things like that. So you've already they start to clump up, and that's already bad enough. But then you get this little cut on the inner wall, and then they start going and building in between the inner and middle wall, so it creates like a little lump. And then the issue with that is your body goes, oh well, I've got a cut, I've got to fix it. So how do I fix it? Well, most people know about platelets and just the basics of that. And so your body tries to cover the gap. But the problem with that is as they cover the gap, you have your immune system comes in and tries to eat the bad camels to get rid of them. But there's too much, they pop, and it just creates more. So then the body tries to clot that. You get more buildup of your bad camels or your LDLs. Body tries to clot that, and eventually you'll get what's called an occlusion. So you can function with up to 90. There's been reports of 98% occlusion, and people still get no chest pain.
Is that 98%
block? Sorry, yeah, occlusion.
That's pretty crazy.
Occlusion is a block. Yeah, it's insane. Which you think about it, it's
how is their heart functioning?
Yeah, exactly. So you then run the risks of ischemia, which is basically lack of oxygen to the heart muscle. So what? The good thing about HDLs, or the good camels, they've got two. It's a great analogy.
I'm just trying, how do they relate to camels?
So the good camels, because they're good camels because they're
so impressed by this. Yeah. He's like, whoa.
Well, the way it was explained to me is good camels. You can pack them full of whatever and take them out, and they'll carry all the stuff for you. So the way it works is the HDL, or the good camels, group up with the bad camels and actually take them off the artery wall, which is a good thing, because that is not building up as plaque. It's not aggregating together and causing that occlusion. They're free floating in the bloodstream, which can then be the body can then get rid of or store in a more appropriate place.
And hence why we obviously endorse good fats and good animal fats and good fats you get from fish or even hemp oil, which recently even Anthony and I have found through one of our other clients, Enzo. He got us on this hemp oil, and basically it's
I'm ripped right now from this.
you take less dosage. So it's cheaper than what fish oils or what are the other oils you get, omega-3s and 6s, krill oils. You take less of them, and you get a better response, and you don't get any of the negatives of the fish oils and krill oils because of I don't know why, but for example, Enzo gets a lot of
so with the fish oil, a lot of it's comes down to mercury content.
Yeah, and mercury.
Say this things they say don't eat more than, I don't know the exact number, so don't quote me, but don't eat more than a certain amount of tuna a week, in tuna tins.
Yeah.
Because you actually have higher amounts of
there's so much
mercury,
kilos,
and it's really bad for you.
Yeah.
So Enzo was saying, so a client we have, he was having heaps of pain. He's 57. He's a beast, man. We call him the bull for a reason. He's so bloody strong. But it helped with a lot of his pain and inflammation. But he was taking so many fish oils, and he just broke out in hives all the time, and rashes, and he was getting sick, and then he switched to the hemp oil, and he felt a lot better. It's the same, omega-3s and that, but just none of the mercury and...
Yeah, it's just like a healthier way to consume, your healthy, like your omega-3s, your 6s, and everything else that comes with it.
Also, if you're eating tin tuna, I just want to bring that up. Get your shit sorted. It's like,
hey,
if you feel personally attacked, you're the problem.
Yeah,
because there's better food to get for similar price, and one mercury content, because people that eat a lot aren't eating like once a week. Like nobody sits down to a nice dinner of tin tuna.
Yeah.
They're using it, they're throwing it in some instant rice or something. There's so many better options out there. So just stay clear of that. Like, cook up a bunch of chicken and actually work out cheaper gram for gram by a lot. Or get a protein shake. It'll actually be cheaper gram for gram by a lot.
I know people who eat tuna, but actual tuna. Like not out of a tin.
Yeah, I'm saying tin tuna.
Yeah. So people eat actual
better
tuna,
than that.
but people actually like that. They actually consciously don't eat too much of it because of the mercury issue.
Yeah, and what's the reasoning behind it? Because it's a big fish and it eats a lot of other fish, like something like that.
Yeah, it's something about the consumption of something in the ocean. And
yeah,
it's just more mercury.
Anyway, just,
but yeah,
and just don't eat tin tuna. Have some self-respect.
I mean, but it is one way to clear out a room.
Obviously, I'm over exaggerating
Yeah.
for effect, but like I used to eat heaps of tin tuna, and now like I don't even tell people to get supplements, but I prefer to have a protein shake, or I eat so much turkey and chicken now. Like, there's better things for you.
Yeah.
So have you learned anything about so diet being one of the biggest things for obviously having heart problems?
Yeah.
And there's other contributing factors like in terms of like marathon running, enlarging of the heart. Overuse of drugs, like obviously increasing heart size.
20 years of lying, bro.
Yeah. Do you have any knowledge about those aspects of the heart as well, or is it more
so? If you're talking in terms of cardiac hypertrophy, which is enlargement of the muscle, so what happens is it's typically if you break the heart up into 4 sections, you'll have. Looking at it, so when you're looking face down on the heart, on the bottom right corner quadrant is going to be your left ventricle. Now that's the biggest muscle part of the heart because that's where all the blood gets pumped from the heart to the rest of the body. So what happens is the way cardiac muscle works is, if I'm correct, it's called Starling's law, which is basically the idea is.
I want to not quote you on that.
Yeah, don't quote me. I think it's Starling's law.
I can see the hesitation.
Where the law is basically once something that is elastic is stretched, the more it is stretched, the harder it contracts. So the principle being the heart needs to fill up so that it can stretch the muscle, so then the muscle can contract.
Okay.
The problem with cardiac hypertrophy is hyper, not po. That's very important in case my accent throws it off. Hyper is the ventricle becomes so large that even with the amount of blood being filled, it can't stretch enough, which means it can't contract as hard, which means the blood can't get pumped through the body. So they start having a lot of cardiac issues related to that. Low blood pressures, the heart not getting enough oxygen supply, parts of the body.
Why do these things, people think like marathon running and that, it's actually a big and this is relating back to this and to what Tyler asked, it's a big assumption that, you run marathons, you're going to be really healthy. Well, you don't see many old marathon runners, right? Not when they're at a high level, do it a lot. Because they do develop a lot of heart problems and everything. What about hot, intense physical activity and I'm pretty sure we know the answer, but we'd like it maybe explained in further detail, or any input you have is why is it that, you get athletes, they train their whole lives, they like to think they're fit and everything. Why do a lot of athletes, whether they be strength athletes, marathon runners and that, develop heart problems? And take drugs out of the factor. So that's a given. You've got bodybuilders, powerlifters and stuff. Not even them, a lot of sport, you contribute a lot of stuff like that potentially to performance-enhancing drug use. But say you're a lifetime drug-free athlete, you still got a good chance, if you compete at a high level and you train for a long time, of developing heart issues, enlarged heart and everything. Why? What's the response to that? Is it because...
Well, it's as simple as the heart is a muscle. And just looking at, the classic, the bicep. you use your biceps enough, the muscle, you've got your micro tear. There you go. You got your micro tears and all that builds, eventually develops into larger muscle. You get stronger and so on and so forth. Training as a professional athlete, because the heart rate is at such a high level and the intensity is so high for so much longer, the muscle is getting used a lot more, which then causes it to enlarge, grows like a normal muscle.
It's just a stress. And it happens at a lot. So it's a different kind of muscle.
Yeah, it's obviously. A cut. Yes, yeah.
It's a way different, like very time drug free. One of us develops heart problems in the future, enlarged heart. It'd be just simply from the added stress.
I think it's also important to note that having cardiac hypertrophy is not bad in itself. Okay. It's once you get to that extreme limit that these professional athletes get where, and it takes them years. You see a lot of the bodybuilders in like the 70s and 80s are now starting to develop a lot of cardiac issues because of just how overworked their heart was. That's when you can have a bit of enlargement. Enlargement isn't a bad thing. It's when it's just getting to that point where it's, again, bringing it back to that law. Yeah, the heart just can't fill up quick enough to expand the heart muscle.
And it's like, and why, like, I guess marathon running being like picked on is a big thing. It's because they're under stress for such a long period of time. Where like weight training, you hit PBs maybe. Well, heavy maybe singles.
You guys aren't under a lot of stress with weight training. You try to do like 15 reps at 230 kilos.
But it's probably why it's not as bad in natural powerlifting, for example, just simply because we're not under that stress for long periods. And
because it's still a young sport.
And that is true. And you know what? Like, this goes back to our Lord and Saviour, Stan Efferding. He says, if you want to be healthy, don't compete. But the problem is people are going to compete.
Yeah,
and we're a competitive species. It's culturally it's there, but
same
I guess
bodybuilding though, like lifting weights in itself isn't unhealthy. But bodybuilding is unhealthy.
Yeah. Way
when
more.
You go to do shows.
Well, those cuts and that are really bad for your body. Way worse than just like say squatting heavy or But it goes back to the fact that we're going to compete. We're going to put stress on our body, but that doesn't mean that you're going to destroy your body in every other aspect. And so going like, okay, well then don't drink, for the rest of your life then.
Yeah,
because that's also going to add to the strain on your heart. Sleep properly. If you sleep 5 hours a night for your whole life, you're probably going to die of a heart attack or have a stroke because that's the likelihood of those consequences. So it's like, okay, if you're going to compete, compete, but look after yourself. Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're not going to not compete.
Yeah, of course.
Just be smart and be realistic. Like, it's just, important. And don't eat burgers.
Don't eat burgers.
Everything in moderation.
Well, that's it. And I think people, it's so quick to jump on the extremes. Like we're talking extremes of this is what can happen. But it's not, it's years and years and years at such a high level and a high intensity.
The average person doesn't have to worry about it.
You don't have to worry about it at all. If you want to come lift weights. Like that's you're not going to just.
I guess it's
go back.
You don't scare people off.
You actually know the healthy people, but where that people actually have to worry about is people who have hereditary problems in the heart. So I've got a friend who had to have heart surgery, not because of the strain he was put in his body. He was always going to have that heart surgery from birth. And a lot of people apparently are just born with heart problems they don't know about. And they're the young people who drop dead in a treadmill when they go to 90%, 100% effort all of a sudden on a treadmill and then drop dead. It's not because of years of stress they put on their body. They have a predetermined heart problem. They didn't know about.
I guess then you can get back, touching on before, you add in performance-enhancing drugs. It's obviously
eating bad, drinking, not sleeping, it just makes it even worse.
You start throwing in different body mechanics through the use of performance enhancing drugs and how they affect body chemistry, and you go into a good one is that is GH or growth hormone that that has real big repercussions in terms of cardiac hypertrophy. It just enlarges the heart a lot more than. They gave us a brief sort of rundown of those types of common performance-enhancing drugs that we might see out in the field, and just gave us a basic understanding. But that was a big one that stood out.
Yeah, they said the main ones.
You listen to the way bodybuilders and that talk about human growth, and guys are their hands grow, their skulls grow, so they look like a Neanderthal. Their feet grow, their jaws grow, so they get braces and stuff.
Yeah, they're putting a lot on the line.
It's a very intense sort of thing.
So, we learned a lot about the heart, stressing that. Now, I know we want to touch on like sedentary lifestyle, and I've got it written down here. Here's something I prepared earlier. The next topic: sedentary lifestyle, blood factors, clotting issues, and everything like deep vein thrombosis. Like, just you go ahead. You know what you want to talk about.
So it's very common knowledge. Sedentary lifestyle or an inactive lifestyle is not too particularly healthy. Now, we'll exclude the blood factor, clotting factors and stuff for now, and just talk because it's most people won't have that issue. But with the problem with the sedentary lifestyle is you get what's called venous pooling, which is basically venous referring to veins. And blood pools are, like, for example, us sitting down right now, we've got blood pooling in our feet. Now, the issue...
I feel self-conscious. I can feel it. Don't point that out.
The issue arises when sitting down for long periods of time or being inactive for long periods of time. Blood, it likes to clump together. And it needs to constantly be moving to not clot, which is, you might have heard if you're doing long plane trips, especially, I'm sure going overseas, both of you have gone overseas, get up and walk every hour or 2 hours, just do a lap or do something, because what happens is you get there's active and passive venous return. So your active is your constriction of your tightening of your veins and blood vessels to pump blood back up to the heart, and then passive, which is used, when you are going for a walk, the contraction of your muscles in your quads and that, they also pumps blood up just from being in the vicinity and expanding and so on. So it's good to do that, because what happens is if you venous pull too much and blood's not moving, it clumps together and you get what's called a thrombus, which is basically the fancy way of saying a blood clot. And then they start off very small, but once that forms, you get up, you go, oh, you know what, I've been sitting down for 8 hours at work, I'm going to go for a walk. That clot then gets pushed by those active and passive venous return factors, and all of a sudden now that little clot that's, a couple mil has gone up through your leg, it's gone into your heart, and then it's been pumped up to your brain where the vessels are very small.
And here I'm hoping you're like, it breaks up, it's not an issue.
But it's just something that can happen, and it's a very, very actually no, I shouldn't say that. It is a lot more likely to happen in someone who is not active and who is not moving around than it is in someone who is getting up every hour or 2 hours, going for a 10-minute walk, doing something.
Reduced likelihood, yeah.
And then you add in clotting factors, especially if people have factor 5, which is, there's a bunch of different factors that are involved in blood clotting, and factor 5 is one of them. My gran actually has this, where it's an inability to bind to factor 5, which causes blood clots to happen more. They occur more. So it's very important for her to be very active. She's, in her late 70s. So she's got to be moving around the house. She's got to be standing up and doing things to just try and reduce that. Obviously, they're on medication and things like that as well. Just because it helps. It helps to move blood around, keep it going.
Well, this goes back to how we think it's important for elderly people to keep doing something, and whether it's just walking or exercise or weight training even, and they're not going super heavy, but they keep moving, they keep the body going, and the body has to obviously go, okay, I still need to use this muscle.
That's the thing, you don't retire and then just sit at home all day. That's why people
die. I
remember concrete, and they're like, when concreters retire, they die not long after, and I'm like, no, it's probably got something to do not with the fact that you retire from concreting, but you retired from concreting and then sat there and drank 2 bottles of whiskey a day for 5 years. Yeah. And then you're like, oh no, the job's cursed.
And then they stop moving, and then
exactly,
the body, and then
you're sitting on the couch. It's important to stay busy, and this is something I wanted to say. When you say that it's less
prevalent.
In what?
In active people, you think. I know this is a bit of a generalization, but often active people aren't going to sit down for 8 hours and do nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, that'll probably be another reason. Like, you know, I know it's hard for me to sit there and do nothing for however long. So active people are less likely to, you know, sit on the couch watching movies or TV shows for 8, 10, 12 hours a day.
Well, you get up and you feel like you're an elderly person. You're like, oh,
I get up with like 2 episodes of Game of Thrones. I'm like, ooh, like my bones.
Got an 80-year-old man's back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the good thing about powerlifting as well, and that is it's using so many muscles of the body that aren't used in day-to-day activity, or aren't typically used, I should say. That it's very helpful for things like that. And it also is very good for your cardiac health, as well. Touching back, and it keeps things flowing. It keeps the body. It can perform at a higher level. And it's less stress on the heart when you are resting.
Just start handing these out to people you are safe. Apex Strengthcast.
I was going to say, that's what's important, that we program 15s and 20s, because we want to keep people's cardio
give
up.
That spool to people. You're like, hey man, look, I know you're like hoping you survive this. Well, have I got a deal for you? Contact Anthony and Tyler down at Apex.
Yeah, when I drop them off at hospital, fill out their paperwork, I'll just clip that on the clipboard and just, there you go, give that to the...
Do you actually have any tips if someone just all of a sudden started having a heart attack in the gym? What would your tips to be to just at least preserve the life they have left, so obviously paramedics can get there and get them to hospital, and like, is there any...
A big thing they drill at us is quality CPR. That's the most important thing, especially if there's not an AED, which is an automatic electric defibrillator, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Which is basically, you see them in the movies, or you might have seen them down at your local shopping centre. They're just the big cases on the wall.
A lot of big gyms have them now. Like Genesis, everything, they have them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're very easy to use. And anyone who's done a first aid course will know, you know, the basics of it. But the idea is, so in CPR, we do a ratio of every 2 minutes we swap. All right, because anyone who's done any sort of endurance, high intensity endurance, you're going at 100 to 120 beats a minute. As funny it is to say the song "Staying Alive," if you can hit that beat, that's a really good rhythm to be at.
Oh, yep.
Giving that quality CPR, because
just the chorus, or you like staying alive?
No, so when I was in my exams and I had to do CPR, I would sing it in my head.
Just the chorus?
Yeah, I do an 8 counter. So I was like, ha, 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 staying alive.
See,
ha,
that's where I'd
ha,
speed up.
Ha, 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 staying, and just loop that in my head. And next thing I know, it's 2 minutes.
Some person on the floor, you're like, I'm going to save you, man. Like,
and they're sing it out loud.
Yeah, like, staying alive. And they're like, are you mocking me right now? Like,
they said to us, they're like, please do not do that. It's all right if you do it in prac, but do not do that out on road, because you will get so many complaints.
Yeah. Do it in your head though. It's okay. Like, they don't know.
Yeah, like,
hey, yes, you're saving their life. Like,
they're staying alive.
Yeah, they're staying alive. Yeah.
Well, so an interesting fact with CPR, it takes, with good effective CPR, so we do a ratio of 30 to 2, which is 30 compressions, so 30 pumps to 2 breaths. And we have to, unless we got, you know, some advanced life support or advanced airways sort of in, then it changes. But to keep it simple, you do 30 compressions, and then that's where, like, if you're comfortable, you'll do the mouth to mouth, and you do 2 breaths. It takes 10 pumps, 10 compressions. That's it, just like that. You gotta use your tongue to slide their tongue out the way. But the first 10 compressions of that 30 are actually to get the blood pressure up high enough so that oxygen can get into the cells. So out of your 30, 20 of them are actually heartbeats. So you do your 30, you stop, you do 2 breaths, that takes, you know, let's say 3 seconds. Their blood pressures hit 0. That's 3 seconds plus however long it takes you to get those 10 pumps to get the blood pressure back up. So let's say all of about 5 to 6 seconds, they've had no diffusion. They've had no oxygen transfer.
That's why they say, though, when we did the course, like, seeing if someone else to do the breathing, you do the pumping.
Yeah,
and then you can swap.
Swap every 2 minutes is really good, because you'll notice even with
you fatigue.
Oh, absolutely.
And
We try and get 2 crews out when I do my scenarios, or even on road when I've done my placement. 2 crews, because it takes 4 people.
Yeah.
It easily 4 people.
No, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of like the listeners, so that people know this, is it the amount of pressure you put is as if you're trying to crack their ribs?
You're gonna break ribs.
Yeah. So the idea is you're putting enough pressure that could actually crack their ribs. Yeah.
It's a third of the chest depth.
Yeah.
Is what you're going. A third.
I feel like that's pretty hard to like.
Why not
I guess
use your foot or something?
Well, it's funny you say that.
I mean, I've done the CPR course. We need to do first aid to work at the gym, but like, why not just? I feel like that would be way easier. I could do that for like 20 minutes. Like, I could probably do that for the rest of someone's life. Like, just use my foot.
It's
so hard to control the pressure with your foot. That's why.
And
Because
you
you're
got-
like,
you
am I
can't
doing
get
too
that.
much? Stand. Oh no, their chest is collapsed.
Well, yeah, that's the
I'm only
thing.
joking, by the way. Like, I'm gonna be like stomping on someone. One
Yeah,
day, like, hey, man.
where when you're over them, you've got only the weight of your upper body. I think it's more of like a relative to their chest strength.
Well, not just that.
So-
You can get the rebound. You
Yeah.
can feel it.
Someone has a heart attack in the gym. Well, what do you think's a heart attack? Like, just having chest pains, don't start doing CPR. You probably kill them.
Yeah,
But
don't do that.
like, I did CPR. He kept saying no, but I did what I could.
Yeah.
Good CPR. So, like, obviously, if you're working in a gym environment or anything like that, you need to have your first aid. It's very important. You need to know how to do this. And I'm not on a tangent yet. Make sure, good quality CPR.
Yep.
Especially if you've identified if they've collapsed and their heart's not beating and everything.
There's no pulse. Then go
Don't
for
wait.
it.
Don't wait for the ambulance.
Yeah.
Just
So it's only if they're unconscious.
Even if it's also important, even if you don't know CPR, any compression is better than none, because at least something's moving.
Once you start, you can't stop though.
Yes. I heard that as well.
Yeah, in the course they said something like you can't stop.
I think it's if you're
unless
qualified.
the person's more.
I think you have to have the certification.
It's-
If you have that
the
certification,
But you can
you
not
can't
do it
leave.
if you want.
No,
If you have a heart attack, if you had a heart attack
yeah.
right now, I've got my first aid. He had a heart attack, and I'm like, nah. Like, I'm gonna call the police. I'm gonna call the ambulance. I just didn't do it. They were like, look, you're a shit bloke, or maybe you're stressed out. I'm having a panic attack. I'm at no thing, but then if I start doing it, I'm like, oh man, I'm tired. Like,
And you
can't
stop.
stop.
Well, then you're a murderer. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I'm like, look,
I don't know about murderer.
I don't really know him.
You
Like,
know,
I've
I need
known
to
him for
lift.
like
I need to
4
lift tomorrow.
Monday, I've got some heavy squats. So I thought, best interest for everybody. I know he'd want me to get the weight on Monday. So I was doing him a favor.
that's it.
Leave it to the professionals.
But yeah, in terms of that law, I'm pretty sure it's if you have a qualification, you're not obligated to do anything, but once you start, you are then therefore.
Yeah.
But don't let that stop you, because you've got the Good Samaritan law, which is in preservation of life. If something's happened, like you break the ribs, is a classic one. You can't get in trouble for that because you're preserving life.
Yeah, so don't worry about hurting them, because at the end of the day, you're meant to be putting a fair bit of pressure. Now, if it's
You wanna
little
be
fuck,
cracking
if it's like I don't know,
Take the bank
a
details.
45 kilo girl, you're not going to put as much pressure as what you're going to do for Anthony, a
yeah.
120 kilo man. So it's like,
And
nothing
they
about
said
the
that
gender, but just look at the size of
about
him versus
babies
yeah.
as well, right? Like,
Oh,
two
okay.
fingers over.
Yes,
I
two
don't think we
fingers,
need to go
yeah.
into this because
Yeah.
it's in the gym. Like, I'm not coaching babies.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you squat?
Why are you dying?
This is supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Like, we don't coach babies, so I think that's fine to bypass. Like, most
Yeah.
people, if they know CPR, I feel like most people, unless they know CPR, no one's going to try on a baby, right? Like, unless you kind of been taught and have an idea. I mean, look, in the end, you do the weekend course. I'm not confident in my ability to do CPR, but I'd try my hardest. I feel like you need that better training, right? Now to that, we wanted to go into something.
So another topic, I guess, would be people, especially beginners in coming into lifting, who have asthma issues.
Okay.
And just people who actually have asthma who do lift, just to get a better understanding of what's going on.
So I think what you're alluding to is exercise-induced asthma. It's to give a basic rundown of asthma. What happens is there's a few things. Asthma is an immune response, and so two major things happen. You've got excess mucosal secretion, which is your mucus, so you're coughing up a lot of phlegm and things like that. And you've got constriction of the bronchioles, which are the tubes in your lungs that link to the alveoli, so on. That's lung pathology. But anyway, so what happens is you get that constriction, and then you get what's called mucosal plugging, where the mucus then blocks the airway, and that's where the majority of the breathing issues come from. Now, they've done some research into it, but they haven't found the official link as to why exercise will, in some people, will induce an asthma attack. Something to do with a stimulant. You might have heard of exercise-induced anaphylaxis, which is an allergic reaction, and so
I'm allergic to exercise.
So it's a really weird thing, because you go, how can someone be allergic to moving around? But they reckon it's something possibly to do with like irritants in the air.
And I get it every time I try to do cardio. It's all right.
So I don't even have asthma, and I get asthma-induced exercise-induced asthma. But what I can give is tips. First thing, if you're an asthmatic, definitely have your pump within grabbing range. You've got to be able to reach it, just in case you need to have a puff.
I'm impressed. I figured if you were going out, you were just going to go out.
20 years of line, man.
Yeah.
Second thing, tell your training partner or your coach. It's very important that you tell your training partner or your coach that you have asthma, so they're aware of it. So if something goes wrong, it's not like...
That's very important, because I'll be like, what's wrong with you? Like, do the same.
Like, hey, I know it's hard. I can't breathe when I do 15s either.
Yeah, they're like...
Oh, we're laughing about life-threatening stuff.
Yeah.
I mean...
have asthma pump with you. That's
have your asthma pump.
And tell your coach.
And also...
Or your training partner, yeah.
And also, be aware of it. Don't jump straight into high intensity, heavy stuff right out of the bat when you know that you've already got a weaker respiratory system. Build that up. Start off, instead of going straight for a 10K run, maybe go for a 2K walk.
Yeah.
See how your body responds to that. If it's pretty good, okay, then also, but I would 100% talk with your doctor and talk with a coach.
Because you should have an asthma plan, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
If you have asthma, you need to have a plan.
Yeah.
How to deal with it, what to look for. It can come out of nowhere, but you should go to the doctor and know everything. Like, it shouldn't just be because I know in Australia, or Victoria, I don't know about the other states, you don't need a prescription for Ventolin. You can just go to the chemist, get Ventolin, which is all good and well, which is great. Like, if you haven't had it for years and then starting to play, I'm going to go down to the 24-hour chemist and get a Ventolin. But don't just then be taking Ventolin willy-nilly. Go to the doctor, get a plan, get on other medications, talk to the doctor about what flares it up.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Finding out what's going on.
Also, I don't know much about the whole asada side of asthma.
So,
you know it better than me.
When I got tested late last year, I actually had an asthma storm. So I take Seretide and Ventolin. Seretide's the purple one. Right, which is a preventer, and then I take Ventolin as needed. And but we had one of those big storms. Everyone asthma flares up because of all the pollen or whatever. I don't know the exact science behind it. So 2 months before, I had a fair bit of Ventolin, and I was like, "Look, guys, I'm just gonna give you a heads up. They're like, do you take anything?" I'm like, "Well, no. These are the supplements I take. It was vitamin D, fish oils, hemp oils." And then I was like, but I do take Ventolin and stuff. And they're like, okay, that's fine. You need 16, this is what they told me. You need 16 puffs in a 24-hour period to fail.
Yeah.
That's the recommended. You don't need a therapeutic use exemption unless you're going over this amount, right?
Yeah.
Which is really no good reason you should be. And I'm like, yeah, but then you read this as 8 in 12 hours. I'm like, look, I probably had 8 to 10 in 12 hours because it was so bad and it was before bed. And that's when they were like, look, yeah, this is not great, but it's probably not going to be an issue, because I think it's in and out quite fast. I was also reading up on it myself afterwards. I was interested, and not that I was worried or anything. I did nothing wrong. I was under the 24-hour threshold, but it can be apparently you can only test for high amounts of it for short periods of time.
Yeah.
Right. So But it means you could take like 2-3 puffs and then get tested not long after, and you might be on the upper end.
Yeah.
Whereas you could take 20, but if it's 12 hours, 15, 20 hours later, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you are taking a lot, if you are taking some medications you do need a therapeutic use for, I just know those two, Ventolin, Seretide, up into a certain level in your body, you don't need a therapeutic use exemption. You can take it.
There you go, that's interesting.
Wanted to get on to stress-related cortisol.
Yeah.
So as long as we're happy to move on to that, something a lot of us interested in, you hear a lot, oh, you stress, your cortisol levels are high, it's a gains goblin, it kills gains.
Gains goblins.
I want to go into that, like how it increases weight gain, immune system suppression, and your inflammation response to it, or because of it, or in spite of it. I don't know.
So, cortisol, it's probably most people know it as the stress hormone. Basic pathology, you've got your fight or flight response, which you've probably heard before. And this goes back evolutionary thousands of years ago. It was whether you stay and fight or you run for it. Now, what happens is your body releases adrenaline and cortisol when it thinks will have to engage the fight or flight.
Why?
That can be from just a stimuli, could be
why is
stress.
Cortisol release.
So I'll get into that.
Sorry, I'm like too ahead of. I want to know.
So cortisol is released because what it does is So insulin, think of it as like it's your friend, and it gives you a hug and takes you around to when you go around to their place. They shake your hand, take you inside, say how you going, right? Yeah. And your glucose. So I'm coming around to your house. I'm glucose. Your insulin. We meet at the front door, which is the cell wall. We say, shake hands, how you going? And you take me inside. And that's how insulin sort of works with glucose. Now, what cortisol does is it stops the effectiveness of insulin. So now glucose can't get into the cells, and you've got a lot more free-floating glucose to be used for larger muscle groups if you're going to run. So there's already free-floating glucose around, ready to go. So if I'm going to book it from, a couple debt collectors, I'm ready to go.
Fight or flight.
I'm ready to go. So that's the idea behind it. Now, how does that relate to weight loss? Weight gain and all that sort of thing. So, there's two main reasons. One of them being as high levels of continuous stress will constantly produce cortisol because your body's always in that state ready to go. So stress can be anything from a lot of daily stresses. It could be stresses related to family. I know Casey in the podcast touched on body issue and body image.
Was that you about to drop something real personal about Casey?
But like body image, and that can be a stress for people as well, which I find is a pretty common denominator for a lot of people getting into powerlifting or lifting in general is the stress of, I don't look the best, I don't feel the best, how do I do that? So that can be a contributing factor. Now what happens is, getting back to one of the main reasons it blocks insulin's effectiveness, which means glucose can't get into the cells. Your cells need glucose to survive. So the cells do is they send messages to the brain and say, hey, there's no glucose, I'm hungry. And you start stimulating your hunger drive. So you start eating. Your body goes, hey, I'm hungry. Yeah, and that's where the stress eating comes from. You go, hey, I'm hungry, I'm going to start eating now, because your cells think, hang on, why there's no glucose? Why am I not getting any glucose? Because the cortisol is stopping insulin from taking it in. All right, so that's one. Another reason is cortisol has also been linked to controlling the mechanisms of appetite, hormone function, and how it relates in the body. It's they don't know the direct link, but they know it plays a role.
Yeah.
So they found that the test was looking at, why do people go to higher calorie foods now? So we've got, all right, we stress eat, but why are they going to the higher calorie foods? Because typically when you picture someone stress eating. It's
chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate. You're sitting on the couch. Or comfort food.
Yeah.
I think is a very bad term to use, but comfort food.
Comfort to the grave.
It's not the most ideal.
Boxes, they're real comfortable. Yeah. Real padded, nice and cozy.
It's true. It's a bad
But yeah. So I don't know.
Is there available though? So instinctively,
Maybe.
we want to eat the highest calorie thing.
Maybe
I
I
get the most out of it.
I think because your body thinks it's starving, it's like get calories in,
like,
get
into
them
me,
in,
no matter how. Like,
and then you run the risk of
and you're like, oh, I ate a whole thing of like ice cream last night, but that's okay. I was stressed.
Yeah.
I only do that like once a week. It's only like 5,000 calories.
Where you don't really want to wait for pasta to cook or something.
yeah. Well, there's that, but it's like I don't know whether it can be anecdotal. I can say for myself, but whether people listening at home has had this experience. When you're not stressed, there's no way you could down a block of chocolate.
I'd like to.
But you know what I mean. But you know what I mean.
Best mate, Tyler.
You can't, like, I would struggle to down a block of chocolate. Whereas if I was super stressed, man, that just gone. Like I can just I can get up every 10, 15 minutes and grab a row. Whereas if I was not so stressed, I might grab a row a day at the max because I know in myself. I go, why would I don't need to eat all this.
So what about people that are the opposite? When I'm stressed, so usually I'm on like 5,000 plus calories a day, 5,500. Can get through that a normal day, no worries. When I'm stressed, man, I can't eat like half or more of the meals I'm supposed to.
I mean, I guess that comes in. It could be behavioural, but it could also be an exception to the rule. There's always outliers.
Yeah,
to the rule.
Is there an explanation?
Not that I know of.
Or like, is that literally just like, I'm like stressing so anxious I feel sick?
But
maybe that could.
I feel the same way as you in that regard. I don't think I've ever in my life stress ate.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I don't get it. So when someone's like, and it took me a while. I was like,
yeah.
Like 5. Like,
and we've seen people react to stress like that in terms of like Nick Reed, he's had a really stressful time in his life, and like he lost weight. He was trying to eat, but it's like you're not hungry. So
I guess
like,
it depends on the time and like the type of stress, circumstantial, like.
And it's individual.
There's
obviously,
probably there could be hundreds of different factors as to why someone decides not to eat over. Which because you'd think in terms of like the pathology or how cortisol works, you'd go, that makes no sense. Why would someone actually do the opposite? But there's probably another reason why that trumps the cortisol.
Yeah.
But I know personally, like exam time, like I might take a week off.
Training.
Well, not just training, but like my dieting. Like all of a sudden, you just go, I'm not going to count calories. Or you finish all your exams and you go, you know what? I'm going to have like a massive dinner, and you blow out your calories by the 1,000, 2,000 for the week.
Yeah.
I know that. I try and be upfront about it when I say, look, I know I've blown out. And
so if you're getting these symptoms from cortisol and stress and everything, and
it's not just cortisol, but
like. What's good ways to reduce that, not let it affect you as much?
As cliche as it is, activity. Physical activity, and because we all love powerlifting, get into powerlifting. Fantastic way because you start feeling, everything starts improving. Your respiratory system improves, your cardiac improves. You start feeling better, you start looking better. All of a sudden,
endorphins release. Yep.
Exactly. There's no stress. Oh, no stress is not the right word. There's reduces stress.
Reduced anxiety.
Exactly. All of a sudden, those cortisol levels go down. All of a sudden, those cells aren't starving. Next thing you know, happy days. It's not a big big issue as much as if you weren't working out.
It's crazy as well as how many people don't realize how like exercise, how good it is for your stress levels and like just life. If you don't, you never train your whole life, and then you like find out this cool outlet, which is arguably, and I've, don't quote me on this, but better than any medication is exercise is the most efficient way of getting rid of anxiety and stress. So all the pills in the world that you can take, which obviously have side effects or don't work properly, or because apparently when you take like pills for like anxiety and stuff over a long period of time, there's a rebound. So when you come off them, your body rebounds even worse than before. Where you don't have that from exercise. There's no negative repercussion in the long term of that. It's just you're just healthier during that time, in terms of your stress levels and in terms
there's a
of
reason
your
they say
mental health.
If you've got depression and anxiety and everything, like, look, I've got pretty bad anxiety, and exercise doesn't cure it, but it makes it better.
Damn, it helps. Yeah,
exactly. Like, and that's the thing. Like, you're like, oh well, exercising isn't going to cure my depression. What's the point? Well, it can lessen it. It can get you to a point where you can function better, and then you can work towards getting it sorted by other means as well. But it's just a step in the right direction. And, it's going to have different, obviously, levels of success for different people. Like, when I don't train, there's a reason after competition I don't take a week off. I don't train hard after competition for the week after. But, man, if I don't train, my anxiety, I get panic attacks, and it gets worse than it ever than it's been in a long time. And there's a lot of reasons behind why training and, like, exercise, not even just training for lifting, but exercise does help with that stuff. But, it's a step in the right direction. Then you can manage it in other ways. Yeah. It just makes it more manageable. So if you have a big piece of steak in front of you, you can't eat the whole piece of steak at once. You cut it down to bite-sized pieces and chip away.
Yeah. And everyone's individual as well. So for Anthony, it's like anxiety. For mine, it's I get angry. I noticeably get more angry if I don't train for a week. And it's only just a little bit more, but I don't want to be angry.
Yeah. If you say mine's anxiety, like, it's not anxiety only in off training.
In terms of, like, if you just stop training, obviously anxiety is going to get worse.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like definitely I notice I get way more, and because of stress, I get irritable.
Pretty chill, man.
That's
like,
right.
You're a chill guy. Like, so, you're hard to annoy.
And so when I'm annoyed, it's still
Believe
not
me,
as.
I try.
When I'm annoyed, it's still not like as annoyed and angry as other people are. But I notice it in myself, where I'm like, I don't like feeling this way. So outside of the fact that I don't want to feel like I can't walk for a week when you take a week off, that's the other reason why I don't take a week off either. So even over New Year's, I trained twice. It was a deload week. It just worked out that way. And you know what? I had no negative effects in terms of stress or anger. And also this week hasn't been that hard to train because I haven't taken that week off.
There's nothing worse than when and 1 week turns to 2.
Yeah.
2 turns to 3.
Lose that motivation.
Then you come back and your coach punishes you with 25s.
or AMRAPs, as I've found out.
As everyone learned last week. Complain about the volume, I'll just give you more volume.
On training, what are your aspirations in regards to this year? What do you want to achieve this year? Now, don't make it unrealistic because I'll call you out for it.
Well, I would like to compete twice. I think that's a good number for first year in competition. I would ideally like to
outsquat Anthony.
Yeah. And as long as I'm beating Nick, I'm always in front. But
okay, so beating Nick this year, that's a big thing.
But I've taken Nick under my wing. It's going to be unstoppable.
We'll see. Getting as close as to the 105 weight class as I can. As far as I can push myself, that doesn't become
what I like about that is that it's a goal, and you've done exactly what we talk about a lot. Is you're not like, I want to be a 105 this year. You're like, but I want to get as close as I can.
Yeah, it's a really good. Right? It's a good goal setting.
You haven't put an exact number on it, but you're like, look, as long as by the start of 2020 I am closer to 105 than I am to 120 plus or 120.
Yeah.
I've done good.
Yeah.
And that's how you make, long-term changes.
It goes back to, and that's how to avoid the failure of New Year's resolutions, is that in order to succeed, you need to fail, but then continue to keep retrying until you can beat the habits. And that's for you. You've been doing that for a while, ever since I know you've been with us. You've been working on that. And so you're 120s at the moment.
Oh, I'm 120 plus. Well, I haven't weighed myself in the last couple of weeks, but when I did weigh myself, I was 129.
But what's the biggest you've ever been?
Like 132.
Yeah. Okay.
That was, probably about mid last year.
Yep.
And then I was like, so I'd been powerlifting on and off for about 3 years, and then I did some Muay Thai in between. I used to be very fit for me relative to me. I was 98 kilos when I was 17, which was massive for me. I'd never got under 100 kilos since I was like 12.
Man, it's a battle for some people, a long-term one as well.
I was trying to get into, because I was a footballer, and I was really trying to make you know, I went from being at the back of the pack to just running like where I've never been there before. So I put in a bunch of work, and then I had, you know, concussions and all these issues come up, and then that's when I switched to powerlifting, and it was a great thing for me. I enjoyed it, but I would like to get down to that, you know, mid 100 range. I think that's a very good point for me to be at.
It'd be a healthy weight for you in terms of your body structure, in terms of, you know, just how tall you are as well, and then even competitively, I think that's where you'll sit, like being the most competitive you can be.
Yeah, well, that's ideal, and I think at that weight I'll also, you know, there's an element I will look good, which will make me feel good as well. There's that element. That's an element that...
You look better, you feel better.
Healthy guy, even though you're like in the 120s in terms of your weight. Imagine what you'll feel like when you're 105, 110.
Yeah, well, it's
amazing.
Exciting stuff. I'm really... And that's what's given me the motivation to push for comp and that, and for that 105 weight class is, it's like, if I can get... Because I've gotten down to 118 and I felt really good, and I was like, well, you know what, I can push this. I can use it as a reason to keep coming, is to keep pushing myself to that level, next level, and trying to achieve, you know.
No, it's good, and I think the best thing for you is competing, because if there's anything that's going to motivate you, it's competition.
Yeah.
So, to finish, tell us a funny lifting story or a good lifting story. Doesn't want it to be haha. Like, man, I know now he's not coming on. I'm gonna just quickly read. There's a really good story that's I'm you know what? I'm hijacking because we're supposed to have Andrew on a few weeks back.
Yep.
And he's got this story I really wanted him to tell, and it's about back in the day. And he's got heaps of stories, so if he comes on one day, like, it doesn't matter.
Andrew Adruko,
yeah,
you're referring to, yep.
He used to train at Melbourne Uni, and they had this guy they used to call the Terminator. And I think this is the guy they're talking about, so I could have a couple of things wrong here, but it's an amazing story. This is back when, you know, equipped. Everything was equipped. And this dude did a bench on the way down. It's so ridiculous. The bench shirt ripped.
What?
And he still pressed it. And he got the lift.
That's insane.
So that's not a funny story, but you're just like, oh,
maybe he should have upped the weight a little bit.
Yeah. So tell us a good story. It doesn't need to be funny. It could be like that. Imagine seeing that.
Yeah.
Like, no way. And when they rip, man, it sounds like, you know, you snap concrete.
It's like when that guy tore his bicep and then finished the deadlift.
Oh yeah, I've
Are you
seen
talking
that.
about Rob Murrell from Perth, Perth, WA?
But you see him, you can see it go up his
looks
arm.
at it.
He's like, oh
Aussie
my
lifter.
god, but he doesn't stop. Like, what kind of drive do you
I remember
need?
talking to him about that because I was like, hey Rob, man, like, what was with that? Was fucking crazy. I was
Yeah.
because you watch the video, it snaps.
Yeah.
And he just looks at it, and then finishes locking it out.
And then he slaps it.
And then and I'm like, hey man, what's going through your head? He's like, well, if I didn't get that deadlift, the other person would have won. And he's like, and you can't have that, can you? So I was like, it was a good answer.
It's a fair answer.
Yeah.
So mine, Nick. This is actually one I told you about.
We'll get Nick one day, but he can't speak like himself. He's got to speak like Scott Mendelson.
Yeah, dude, the whole time, dude. Like, right at the end, can you do your normal voice again?
So I took a break from powerlifting, and this was just before I started up here. And Nick was like, oh, you know, come do a session. I thought, oh, you know what, let's go do a session, see if I've got the vibe back for it again. So I'm doing a session, I'm going, this is feeling really good. And we were maxing out my squat, seeing, all right,
First session back.
Typical.
You can tell you weren't training here, mate.
He was like, let's see how far your squats dropped, because it got to, and I've never done low bar. I was always a high bar squatter, and then I switched to medium bar, which I found was the most comfortable. He's like, try low bar, and I've just got no flexibility in my wrists or my shoulders or anything to even attempt it. But I thought, let's do my first attempt at low bar with 220 kilos on the bag.
That is insane.
And you did 10.
And I did that, And Nick's like, yeah, you'll be right, mate. Trust me.
That's so Nick. He's just like, I'll just motivate you.
So I step out. I go, happy days, happy days. Go down. Bar slips about half a centimeter. I go straight away. Nah. Pop straight back up. Put it down. My shoulder.
You bailed on it.
No, I got it.
I'm watching you.
Ask Nick. I got it. My whole right shoulder and elbow, they were just out of it. Completely done. And that's when I came here. I told Tyler straight up with squats. I was like, my right elbow. And I had some issues for about the first month.
But
I just could not squat heavy with.
Yeah, it was like a little injury that you got over time. But you're lucky, you're lucky to get away with that with just that.
You're real lucky. Especially him shifting some weight, man. 220 is a small weight.
That's like me switching to like, I don't know, high bar, let's max out. Like I'm used to, at least I'm used to that. Like you've never done it.
Yeah, no, it was, and straight away I was like,
watching people in wraps for the first time.
Oh yeah.
Will tried on a squat suit for the first time, and he like went almost headfirst into the concrete with 100 kilos on.
Yeah. Yeah, and imagine trying to do like the max weight you could, think you could do. Like that's
so I give him a lot of that. And so I just, whenever he gives me advice, I go, you remember the last time I listened to you? What happened? He's like, I'm just not going to give you advice ever again. I was like, good.
Yeah.
What's funny is Nick will give advice until the weight gets really heavy. So like last week when I was like, hey man, 302.5, you reckon 312 is there? And he's like, oh, I don't know, I'm more comfortable saying that.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to snap you up.
But you should high bar it.
You should go close a grip, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my story.
It's been great having you on, man. Actually really informative.
I've definitely learned something today, and if anyone listens to this, they'll definitely learn something because, not everyone...
Great person to coach. Real strong, real genuine. We hope everyone had a great New Year.
Yes, absolutely.
2019, no time like the present. We absolutely love New Year's resolutions.
New you.
Next year, I almost said next week, Tyler and I maybe have another guest on from the gym. You know her. We'll just have to see if she's available. But what we're going to be talking about is something that I have personal experience with, and a lot of people kind of struggle with. And it's one of the main topics I want to touch on next week is how to maintain as much strength as possible on a cut, especially a bigger cut. I lost 25 kilos, my total barely dropped. So we'll go through that, among other things. And, we're really trying to get out some more informative stuff. As much as people love the banter and the shit talk, Tyler and I and our guests, like Dean and other people coming on, they have a lot to share. So as much as we love the shit talk, have a laugh, and we know we never want to take that away, we have decided, we want to be a bit more informative too. Like, we've got a lot of good stuff to say.
Absolutely.
Which is good. So from next week, that's coming. That's what we're going to be doing. I'd just like to add in that every single episode, I've done a pec bounce.
Do it.
But
you shouldn't have sent it until the 100th episode.
I'm like, well, just start looking for him because that one doesn't count.
Yeah.
So now we'll know. Pin it where you saw it. Now we'll know if you're watching. I'm talking to you, Casey. You say you watch every episode. Pin it.
Yeah. Where were the titty bounces?
Where were the titty bounces? Comment on the YouTube videos.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Not a problem.
All right. Let's go drink some beers and stay up all night.